Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com, RockAuto.com, and by DieHard. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Thank you, Alec Webb, and welcome everyone to MotorWeek podcast. Number 119. Excuse me, I've lost my voice before we even start today. That's not a good sign. But I'll depend on the folks around the table today to do most of the talking. We have our writer-producer, Brian Robinson. Hello. Our over-the-edge reporter, Zach Maskell.
Hello, world.
And our writer, Patrick Lucas.
I'll do all the talking you need me to.
I can count on you to do that, Patrick. And we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to run through a lightning round, a viewer question. We've even got some rant and raves. But first, three of the cars that we've been testing lately. And let's start at the top with a car that really, I think, just about everybody has an impression on. It's the 2015 Porsche 911 Carrera 4 GTS. And Brian Robinson, why don't you tell us the niche that this car kind of fills?
Well, it's just kind of a tweener between like C4S and the rear drive GT3 cars and turbos, stuff like that. It's really, at the risk of throwing a wet blanket on the hype, it's really just an S with a few more features that you could already get optionally, just now standard with the GTS model.
But having said that, did you like the car, and do you think it's worthy of basically any special attention?
Yeah, obviously. It's a fantastic vehicle. Just about perfect in every way. And it does have some more horsepower, too. So
it's like 30 more.
Yeah. So I didn't mean to totally put a harsh on it. But center lock wheels, like PASM, a lot of things you can get already optionally are just now kind of combined into a GTS package.
And you could set the stage for this. You can get this package on both the rear and all-wheel drive. And you can also get it on the convertibles.
Yep. So basically, like I said, kind of an upgraded S.
Well, I got to tell you, every time I get into a new generation 911, I'm just considerably wowed at how they've been able to hone this car that when we started this show was such a beast to drive and just such an amazing piece of work that, if you're really stupid, it'll still bite you.
You start looking them up on eBay too, don't you?
What do you mean? Oh, yeah, I have. I have to admit, as I've gotten towards the point where you sort of say, what car would you like to own as you sail off into the sunset? 911 was never on my hit list, but now this particular car, it was such a pleasure to drive. You just wanted to keep going in it.
Yeah, it covered the full spectrum from just pussycat tooling around town to full-on monster in the track for sure.
Yeah, very impressive. You guys have been exposed to
You need to do
911s.
Lots of talking, Patrick.
So, jump in here because neither Zach nor Patrick has spent obviously as much time in 911s as Brian and I have. But when you have a chance to drive it, are you impressed? Are you like, so what?
I am incredibly impressed. I've driven, I guess, probably only a few. I still tell people that the 911 Turbo S is the best car I've ever driven in my, 3 years here at MotorWeek. But this one, you can do no wrong when you're in a 911. I think they just keep getting, I don't know how, but better and better. And
it is pretty amazing. And you pay for it. And I'm sure there's things that we can nitpick all day long, control here, controller, but not too many.
Yeah, it's hard to deny the price tag for such a wonderful machine.
Well, that's another point. All right, this car was pricey. It was what, $115 or so. But you got to compare it to cars that cost 2 and 3 times that amount, as far as performance, anyway. Maybe not exclusivity.
I don't know if you need to go that high, but I wouldn't in any stretch of the imagination consider it a bargain. But you're not getting ripped off either.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to a car that basically we haven't heard a lot about, largely because the company itself has been so much in the news, and that's the 2016 Volvo XC90, their big 3-row crossover. 2002 was when the original one came upon the way. a lot different market now than it used to be. Brian, what's your impression of the XC90?
Yeah, I didn't even realize they were still making it, and that it was still the first generation. Hadn't really had any major changes since 03 model year. So obviously a huge departure. Doesn't really look all that different. More modern.
Looks more upright. Yeah. Looks even more like a station wagon than I think it did before.
Yeah, and it sits a little taller. The best way I can compare it is in similar fashion that Tata is dumping all kinds of R&D money into Jag and has pretty much turned them around in a short period of time. I think the Chinese people that own Volvo are doing a very similar thing. I mean, the interior on this thing is just knockout incredible, and ride quality was great. It's got a tablet style interface for everything like everyone else has, but this one was super. It was just like a tablet. I mean, super intuitive. How like 4-year-olds can sit down and instantly figure them out. Very similar. I thought it worked great.
It's also got in one model, the T8, one of the single most complicated engines that I think in any car today, if not the most complicated. Give us kind of a rundown.
Well, they announced a while back, I don't know when it was, that
about a year or two ago.
Yeah, going forward, all Volvos would be all 4-cylinder powered, and they would just find ways to add power to the 4-cylinder. This one's got the turbo and supercharged 2-liter, and then in the T8 model, it's got a rear-mounted 65-kilowatt electric motor as well. So you got all-wheel drive through that. And
so the electric motor is the all-wheel drive.
Correct. You can still get, if you get the T6, which is just the turbo and supercharged 2-liter, you can get a traditional 4-wheel drive system in that
system or whatever. Yeah. Give me an idea of when is it supercharged power, when is it turbo power? There's got to be what are the parameters there?
Oh, that's more voodoo than I can possibly explain. I just know you hit the accelerator and it feels like a V8 in there. I don't know what's charging when, to be honest with you.
It's a very complicated system, and outside of using it on large trucks, I can't recall any other car that's ever gone this route. But horsepower figures were what with the plug-in hybrid system, it was 400 horsepower. It's 3-something without it, right?
Yeah, low 3s without it.
It's still pretty impressive for a 2-liter.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, it doesn't sound anywhere near like a V8, but it really does feel like a V8.
I was going to say, what kind of sounds are coming from a turbo and a supercharger?
It's super quiet.
Really?
I mean, I don't think they added any, like almost everybody's putting like fake engine sounds through the radio now. I'm not sure that they did that because it's a super quiet.
Wouldn't be their style, would it?
I don't know. I mean, everybody's doing it now. It's just a matter of time.
The new, when I mentioned the upright look, the new the XC90 and also the new Q7 from Audi, they seem to be going a little bit backwards in style, looking more upright and more like a traditional station wagon than ever. So I don't know if we're coming full circle or it's just the new pedestrian crash standards in Europe that are requiring more upright front ends. But I thought it looked incredibly boxy, just like old Volvos used to.
Yeah, and the plug-in hybrid, I should say, you get a 17. They haven't officially done the numbers yet, but about a 17-mile pure electric range, and it's the only 3-row plug-in hybrid available currently.
Yeah. Interesting vehicle, and they've got a lot riding on it. All right, let's go on to our third car, which is a car that, in one guise or another, has been around for a long time. The original, if you believe Nissan, 4-door sports car, 2016 Nissan Maxima. Patrick, you went to the preview.
I did.
What do you think?
4-door sports car. I don't know about that. But 300 horsepower, 3.5-liter V6.
And a CVT.
Yeah, and a CVT. The Xtronic CVT, which was funny because they never said CVT during their presentation.
I bet they didn't.
They always just said Xtronic. But yes, and so they programmed steps into it so that when it's shifting, when you're really getting on the gas, it actually drops like an automatic, which was weird. I don't know what sort of software, what sort of behind the scenes magic is going on there, but fooled me a little bit. If the guy from Nissan sitting next to me had told me about it. Not quite a sports car. I actually thought it was very luxurious, very premium. Really soft materials inside. Steering wheel really comfortable, kind of meaty but soft and squishy. It looked good, totally redesigned interior. The technology controls are basic but laid out nicely. It looks like an upscale 4-door sedan.
In light of what someone from your generation, you're in your 30 or your late 20s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you're an Audi owner, so you could say that you own something fairly comparable.
Right.
Do you think, though, this definition of a sports sedan is really what people want today versus someone my age who remembers a lot hardcore, had to be a rear drive car, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I don't know. When I think of a sports sedan or luxury sports sedan, I'm thinking 3 Series or Audi A4. Mm-hmm. This doesn't feel like that at all.
Too big?
It's bigger.
It's a big car.
It's also front wheel drive, CVT.
But all of those are Audi traits as well.
Well,
can be an Audi trait anyway.
True. I think more all wheel drive.
Yeah. Okay.
But I don't think of this at all as any sort of sport. I mean, yes, you can have fun, you can push it, but I think of it as luxury, comfort.
So too soft, maybe softer than.
Yeah, definitely soft. But it feels solid like a luxury sedan. They're selling it kind of weird. They're doing 5 trim levels and 0 options. So you just kind of pick what trim level you want based on the features you want, and there's no adding or subtracting.
That's kind of like old style.
Yeah,
Japanese.
we'll see how long that lasts. Because dealers love their options.
Yeah, and so like I said, I think in my first look at my quick spin or something, the stuff you really want, you're pushing $40,000 or more at that point, and that's kind of hard to swallow for a Nissan Maxima.
Well, it seems similar. I haven't driven it, but just from the pictures, it seems similar to the Murano in that it's still a basic. I don't know if basic's the right word, but it's not a luxury vehicle, but it's very luxurious.
It's nipping at the heels.
Exactly.
Of
It's right below the threshold of luxury.
Yeah.
And we can talk about the outside styling because that was one of the biggest changes for this generation. I don't know. It felt kind of flat in person. The pictures
looks very edgy in person.
Yeah, in pictures and in video. I guess you can set up the camera how you want, but you see it in person and it's striking, but it's not radical.
When they unveiled it, and I was there, I remember them pulling the covers off, and I think they had a black one, and I thought in black it sort of disappeared. It looks better in colors.
See that. I could see, because the floating floating pillars in the rear are blacked out. So I guess with all black body paint, it would kind of just.
It's a premium car for them, and considering what a success their Altima is, I guess they need something to move people up into and keep them in the brand. But it's too bad in a way that they had kind of a lock on Japanese larger sports sedans for a long time, and they've kind of gotten away from it. But still, I guess it's a car that they know their market for. All right, before we move on to our lightning round, I wanted to pause for a second to talk primarily to those listening to our MotorWeek podcast from the Chesapeake Bay area, Northern Virginia, Maryland, Southern Pennsylvania, maybe Delaware. And it's about a program we have here at Maryland Public Television and MotorWeek about donating your car for MPT. So if you've got a car that you are no longer interested in, maybe you're looking for a worthy cause to donate it, donating your car to support MPT is really pretty easy, a lot easier than fixing it up and selling it yourself.
Do we get to test them before?
No, I don't think we do. I think they go straight into the office that takes care of this. We do, however, accept most vehicles, cars, trucks, motorcycles, which is Brian Robinson's alley, even RVs. We'll consider other types of vehicles. Well, whatever you do, there's 2 things I want you to think about. If you are looking to donate your vehicle to a worthy cause, helping support MPT, and of course all of us at MotorWeek, the number to call is 888-777-9633. That's 888-777-9633. Or what would be even easier is go to your computer or your tablet. Our website is www.mpt.org. You'll get all the details there. And think about it. It's a good way to get rid of that clunker and do something good for public television.
All right. That feels like public television right there.
That was our contribution. That was our pledge break. Now it's back to business. Okay, our lightning round. Our panelists have 2 minutes to debate trending automotive topics. When time's up, they'll hear the bell. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are both set to debut on a lot of new models in the coming year. GM, for one, says it's going to be available on all Chevy products for 2016. Okay, folks, do you like the idea of a supposed better, cleaner, less intrusive smartphone integration? Does it address problems of distraction or create more? What do we think?
I'll sit this one out. You guys go ahead.
Why, Art? You're not a smartphone user.
Yeah, I'm still flip phoning.
Oh,
Sorry.
man.
I don't get how this is supposed to make distraction less. Okay, I mean, you'll obviously, no matter what car you're in, be able to use some voice controls, but we all know Siri is not perfect. Is it because they think it will be so similar to your tablet or your smartphone? What do you think?
It's my understanding that they're going to disable certain functions that might be like you can't text on your
while you're driving
on your infotainment screen, but it's supposed to mimic a design that the majority of people who use smartphones are used to. So
in that aspect, you don't have to learn anything new.
Right. So you plug in your phone to the system, and your infotainment, your 8-inch screen or however large it is, basically turns into exactly what your cell phone desktop looks like. I don't know. I mean, there's going to be certain features. The hands-free stuff works a lot better on cell phones, Siri and Google's voice search and all that. And so if they can integrate that in, I can definitely see it lowering distraction, at least hands.
Plus, that'll get upgraded more easily than you can upgrade a car system.
A lot of car manufacturers have like proprietary systems that you try to use their voice-activated stuff, and it doesn't understand you 90% of the time. Siri and I have an Android, so their Google system work a lot better at recognizing things like, hey, text Emily something, you know what I mean?
The one thing I do like about it, and maybe a couple of things, one is that you will have the availability of a lot more apps than you have on any of the proprietary systems, which seem to limit that extensively. The other thing is I have an iPhone, and I use the Maps program on that all the time.
Yeah.
To be able to use that as a navigation system, instead of fighting my way through the car-based navigation systems, even the best ones, I think that will be a plus. And I guess anything that lessens your time away from looking at the road is probably a plus. But
yeah, I mean, it also, for a purely entertainment standpoint, things like Spotify and Pandora, which are, I mean, I use Spotify.
I use Pandora all the time.
Right, and so I would love to be able to integrate that into the system.
Right. I'm not sure it'll do anything to alleviate distraction, but it seems to me they're just getting out of the business of designing their own systems and letting people who already use their smartphones be a way to have that same functionality in the car.
I think that's what's happening. Yeah. None of you will probably remember, although Brian might. It was probably could have been as long as 15 years ago. Chevrolet, it leaked out of GM that they were going to put a port on the top of their new whatever small compact they were making at the time, where you would plug in your cell phone up there. It was the first of the smartphones. And do this as a way to get around constantly updating, and then it never happened. So this is essentially...
I've often thought about, why don't they do that? Have like a dock.
It was going to happen, and I don't know whether they just figured out they couldn't keep up with all the changing in docking systems, but it didn't.
Yeah, that stuff changes a lot.
Then we went to Bluetooth, but that didn't give you everything, but here we are.
I'm curious, how does it connect? Is it
the bell is spoken?
No. I never got my answer.
Is it Bluetooth?
I think it's a physical plug.
It's a physical plug for this system. Otherwise, Bluetooth works for some of the features now.
I think it does, but
I think you're right.
Which most people would want to plug in anyway so they can charge, right?
Yeah, so you plug in. From what I was reading, because I was confused on it, let's say I buy an Impala. You plug in, and it can sense, or not sense, it can detect both. So you can go from using an iPhone to using an Android device, and it'll switch from Apple CarPlay to Android Auto interface.
Wow. Okay, let's move on now to our viewer question. I think that was a good discussion. Who knows? I guess a year from now we're going to have been exposed to a lot of this.
Still not sure that's the answer. We'll see.
I don't know, dude.
That's our best guess at the moment. Joe writes us, and it's a question about fuel additives. He's got a 2012 Dodge Charger SRT8, nice car, about 19,000 miles, wondering if he should add a fuel injector cleaner. I hear they do cause damage to some motors. What do we think?
Do it.
My experience has been limited, but I think they actually at proper intervals they can do some help. Brian?
I don't know if it'll help. I certainly don't think it'll hurt it.
Yeah. I mean, there are professional services like in our area, BG Products. They have injector cleaning systems.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of one of those things that you probably can use it and see whether it does any good. I haven't really heard it hurting any cars.
I wouldn't see it doing any damage.
Yeah. It's not.
Unless you were to really mess up something in the electronic all the electronics up front, but
most of the fuel injector systems, I mean, basically you've got a fuel injector which is, can get contaminated, and once you mess up the spray of fuel, it can cause engine runnability problems. So you're basically trying to make sure that stays clean, but there's such a volume of fuel that goes through there. Any injector cleaner is not going to be there very long.
Yeah, for sure.
So I hope that helps, Joe. We don't personally, from our humble experience, see that there's a big issue with it. However, if you're concerned about it, there are professional systems that good mechanics have, and I think it's one of those questions that you've obviously got someone that takes care of your car. Ask them about it, and maybe you can get an honest answer and not just an upsell, which is always the problem. All right, moving on to our rant and raves. Does anyone have anything on their minds, current stories that are circulating in the auto world? You got one.
Even wait.
Yeah, can I?
You got one.
I just want to continue the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. What do you? I don't know whether to rant or rave. What do you think about or Google and Apple getting into the car business? I know a lot of people are very skeptical of that and scared of it.
Just because it's so difficult, but on the other hand, think about it this way. Silicon Valley looks like they're taking over the dashboard and the driving experience anyway.
Google's developing their self-driving car. Apple really wants to get into developing cars.
It seems to me that if they're smart, and they are smart, that they'll end up developing systems they can sell to somebody else rather than sit there and try and manufacture the whole car.
Or just buy General Motors.
Yeah, well, they've certainly got enough cash for that. Hey, Mr. Marchione wants to sell Chrysler, wants to merge it with somebody. Why don't he merge it with Google? They've got enough money to take him through good times and bad. I think the bigger question is the synergy for new car development and technology shifting from traditional places like Detroit and Tokyo and Frankfurt to Silicon Valley, and it seems to me it probably is too.
It's all about the software these days anyway.
Yeah.
From what I've been told, Google Maps actually use people's cell phones to determine where traffic is backed up. That's why they're always so accurate with their traffic readings. So
you mean they're actually probably looking to see if the phone is moving or not?
Mm-hmm.
No kidding.
So they're already involved.
Yeah.
Well, Audi has had Google Earth
for quite a while.
Yeah, and so I guess they were just ahead of the game.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and the question is whether or not we're happy with it. Well, you know something, if you buy into the fact that Google and the rest of these Silicon Valley companies are run mostly by very young people who are very trendy, the answer is, can their developments appeal to a large, hugely diverse audience, and can they do a better job of that than, say, traditional automakers? Also, to make a car last a long time takes a lot of development. We all know electronics basically are made to be obsolete within a year or two. Is that going to be a clash of cultures? And how is that going to go down if you've spent $40,000 for a car and in 2 or 3 years a new model comes out that completely makes yours obsolete? I mean, that's back to the way it was back in the 50s and before. So I don't know. I do think they've got the edge of technology.
If it has an Apple logo on it, people will line up around the corner to buy a new one every year.
Or Google, for that matter. Interesting. Good rant and good raid. And that was a good way to end our MotorWeek podcast number 119. I want to thank everybody that has participated, including our writer-producer, Brian Robinson, our over-the-edge reporter, Zach Maskell, and, of course, our writer with the rant, Patrick Lucas. I'd also like to thank those behind the scenes that had a lot to do with making this show possible today. Our audio engineer, Jim Bigwood, who always makes us sound better than we have any right to. Our podcast creator, Bob Mixter. And, of course, Mr. Lucas, again, is our podcast producer, and he's
Home
the
run.
guy
Home
with
run.
the
He is
bell. Home
everywhere.
run.
Wow.
Home
Thanks,
run.
guys.
Thanks very much for listening to our podcast. Be sure to catch MotorWeek on your local public television station and also on the Velocity Cable Network. Till next time, I'm John Davis from all of us at MotorWeek. Thanks for listening and watching MotorWeek.
You have been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com, RockAuto.com, and by Die Hard. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.